splendid atmosphere and beautiful ornamentations of this hall must have astonished everyone. Part of the original colourful glazed bricks used for the ornamentation of Apadana towers still remain today. More astonishing were the 12 capitals of the eastern portico, which were quite unique in the whole complex. They were in the form of roaring lions. Gift receiving at Persepolis was how the Persian kings reinforced the loyalty of their subjects. But they had other methods to manifest the glory of their global empire.
The Persians showed their magnificence and the vastness of their empire in many ways. Their glory, their power were manifest in every part of the empire, which had many nations under its banner. There were 30 nations under Darius's rule, and Darius and his successors made every effort to make these people prosperous and happy.
As an administrator and a builder, Darius was brilliant.
And I gave order to dig this canal from a river by name Nile, which flows in Egypt to the sea which goes from Persia.
In Egypt, he had a canal dug between the Nile and the Red Sea, anticipating the modern Suez Canal. More important was the construction of the Royal Road, stretching about 2,600 kilometers. This road connected Susa and Persepolis at the heart of the empire to Sardis and the Mediterranean shores. This great highway and other network of roads had relay stations at regular intervals, which not only facilitated secure trade and commerce, but also expedited communications through an efficient mail system by the fast-riding letter carriers. These messengers would change their horses at each station and could therefore reach their destination at the shortest possible time. This was in fact a prelude to the Pony Express and today's postal system. It was also under Darius's rule that for the first time a standard weighing system was devised. An old Persian cuneiform script was invented. Simultaneously, gold and silver coins were minted and used throughout the empire. But their greatest achievement was the empire itself. The first global empire was built on a model of tolerance and respect for other cultures and religions that few great powers have ever matched.
Tolerance was the key word in religions in this vast Achaemenid empire. But it was not only tolerance of other religions, it was actually encouraging them. Even though they were Zoroastrians, the Achaemenid kings did not seek to impose their will on other peoples. On the contrary, they helped them. We all know how Cyrus freed the Jews from captivity in Babylonia so they could return to their homelands in Palestine. But this was not the only case. It happened later in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah as officers of the king who came back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. They did the same thing in Egypt and in Babylonia and among the Greeks of Asia Minor. In fact, they are the first example of international religious freedom that we find in the history of mankind.
The reliefs at Persepolis clearly depict this policy. The friendship between nations is masterfully shown here. There is no force or enmity. This atmosphere of peace and harmony is portrayed especially at Tripylon, where noblemen are depicted holding hands and chatting with one another. The Tripylon Palace was probably used by Achaemenid kings to hold council with high-ranking Persian and Median noblemen and state officials. It's therefore named by some experts as the Council Hall. Most of these noblemen carry lotus-like blossoms or flowers, while others hold round objects like apples or colored eggs, all of which are to this day treasured and associated with the Nowruz or New Year festival. And here is the Persepolis Treasury. The treasury, with its unique ornamented and imposing columns, was one of the first buildings to be constructed on the platform. What early Greek historians wrote about the wealth of Persepolis certainly was not an exaggeration. We learn from the reports of Diodorus Siculus that it was full of gold and silver and all sorts of riches. However, Alexander and his army did a very thorough job of looting and finally burning it down to ashes. Therefore, only a small number of objects which were overlooked by the Macedonians have been recovered. Uncovered in the debris of the treasury were hundreds of clay tablets with cuneiform inscriptions in Elamite.
This text says 11 karsha. Karsha is about 83 grams of silver supplied by a man called Shaka, paid out by Shaka, to workers who are described as woodworkers who are making images at Persepolis. And it's an issue authorized by the treasurer of Persepolis, a man named Baradkama, in the 4th year of Xerxes.
These tablets clearly tell us that the workers at Persepolis were not slaves. In fact, the Achaemenid employed large numbers of men and women and paid them adequately in kind or cash according to their skills and nature of their work. We also know from these tablets that there were women supervisors as well.
In many instances, we have women who are called chief, irshara, as the Elamite words in these tablets says. Sometimes they get double than men. If men usually get 3 units of grain per month, they get 5.
And that all the working women received special benefits for their maternity.
There are a whole series of texts that are special rations paid out to new mothers, to postpartum women. Payments that are meant to cover to supplement rations for a whole year.
The builders of Persepolis, gathered from all over the empire, were quite successful in producing one of the most splendid palatial complexes of the ancient world.
In terms of beauty, it's difficult to find the right word. It's a kind of architectural symphony. Everything is built to fit with one another. For example, several buildings of various sizes are set on terraces with different levels to make altogether a very beautiful and harmonized picture.
One of the more imposing palaces of Persepolis, whose ruins are still magnificent, is Tachara, or the private palace of Darius the Great. This palace would have been dimly lit. The light would have been streaming through the windows. Since the stones everywhere were highly polished and thus reflected images, it is also known as the Hall of Mirrors. On the eastern and western door jambs of Tachara, there are reliefs that depict the king in full regalia leaving the palace, followed by two special attendants. Another magnificent palace was the Hadish. With an area of 2,250 square meters, Hadish was King Xerxes' private palace. It was here that Alexander is said to have kindled his catastrophic fire. Therefore, of all the palaces in the complex, this one is completely destroyed. And even the bedrock foundation is burnt to the core. On the south side of Hadish was the Queen's Palace, where the royal ladies lived. Its western wing was reconstructed in the 1930s and today houses the Persepolis Museum.
While Persian monumental and decorative arts consist of elements from various parts of the Achaemenid Empire, they are unmistakably Achaemenid in character and composition. Nowhere in the Persian Empire this harmony is better and more masterfully showcased than in the palace complex at Persepolis.
The largest palace in the complex was the 100-column hall.
We are now in the 100-column hall or throne hall built by Xerxes and finished by his son Artaxerxes I. It was a splendid monument with 100 columns, 10 rows by 10. The columns were all black marble stone with bell-shaped foundation and torus with the capitals in the form of double-headed bulls. It was a splendid monument of the ancient time.
This hall, also known as the Throne Hall, occupied an area of 4,600 square meters and could accommodate hundreds of dignitaries and military officials, as shown on its two northern door jambs. Here we can see 50 military officials, once shown from the left and once from the right. They add up to 100 officials who hold the throne. These are actually the military backbone of the empire and provide an exact analogy to the 100 columns of the hall. Persepolis was the ceremonial capital of the largest empire the world had ever seen. Darius the Great thus described it,
And I made it adequate, secure, and beautiful.
but the beauty and splendor of Persepolis lasted only for 2 centuries. Its majestic audience halls and residential areas perished in flames when Alexander and his Macedonian army conquered and looted the city and its Acropolis in 330 BC.
Alexander was a Macedonian. He first subdued the Greeks and then, pretending to be a Greek, came here destroying the Persian Empire.
When Alexander came from Macedonia, he was fully aware of the importance of Persepolis as the symbol of Achaemenid power, as well as its wealth and riches.
Starting from the destruction of the city of Parsa, killing and slaughtering its people, plundering its houses, then he came here and set fire to the palaces of Persepolis.
When they arrived here, the city was defenseless. Yet, they burnt the city and destroyed its palaces. Thus, the richest city under the sun was no more.